Hi, my name is Greg. I'm an atheist and I post here as GKLR on YouTube, and I'd like to reply to Crispy in regards to his video reply that he made to me. And thanks for your reply. I thought it was very polite and nice, and it was good to see. I really liked to see that video reply. So we get beyond all the, the trash talk and right into the meat. Um, you make great points. I mean, obviously, if somebody is going to be mocking somebody because they're crippled or their race or their sexual orientation or something like that, that's pretty despicable act. And I think that there needs to be lines drawn here. And I think Captain Awesome was the one that said it best when he talked about that religion is a choice, and how he gets always called a racist because of his attacks on Islam and or his critiques of Islam in his comedic way. So I can understand that for some people this actually makes sense, and I'd like to dispel that myth. And I think that you know the video that I made and you watched, it wasn't entirely to you or about you in its entirety. Some of it was, and a lot of it was really, but not the entire video. And the stuff about Brett Keane wasn't. The Bible burning stuff wasn't something. And it was good for you to point out that for you you had no problem with that, and because you're in a position to want to oppose atheists, and here you are saying, well, I don't care. That's good, in my opinion. It's showing that it's not the issue that some make it out to be. And I think it's based more on their cultural thing. I noticed that in Europe it's a more sensitive issue than it was in North America. To the North Americans, it was a free speech thing, like the Muhammad cartoons. And so when you say that it's not okay to, mock these people, well, they certainly were with the cartoons in Muhammad. And would you really be on the people saying that you couldn't write these cartoons? You know, I mean, this is the kind of mocking I mean. I mean, I don't mean much else by it. Now, of course, we are getting into theism, and it's because of the theology of what they believe, rather than, and it's a choice that they make, rather than something that they don't have a choice about, like again, their skin color or their race or nationality. And you prefaced your video by talking about you had been in North America and given a rough run, and I'd like to welcome you to Toronto, where I believe there's 50,000 Filipinos who live quite well with everybody else, and it's most multicultural city in the world, and you're welcome here. I married outside my race, and a lot of people do here, and it's racism is something that's not tolerated. And I've been here my whole life in the most multicultural city, and I can tell you it's not tolerated by me. So it comes down to a choice. Now, sometimes it isn't. And we talk about the Church of Ted and how, I didn't join the Church of Ted, not for this reason, but it's because it comes close to it. And what you're talking about is mocking somebody who's mentally ill, and they're religious, and, that he thinks he's Jesus. And he comes out talking about himself like he's Jesus Ted God. I mean, I don't know if you've seen this guy. You got to check him out if you haven't. So he's clearly mentally ill. Now, what about Oral Roberts going to the top of the tower and saying, he won't come down until God calls him, or he raises, I think it was $10 million at the time, or something, $20 million, I forget what it was. Or the faith healers running around believing, in some cases, I think, that they really are healing people. Well, if we omit bad logic and mental illness, then we can't mock them at all. So I have to include the Church of Ted as something that is valid on that basis, is that even though we know that he's mentally ill, because you're never going to get through to him anyways, he is mentally ill, but there are theists who basically believe the same thing, or believe very close to the same thing, or for the same reasons, especially if you were to get down to creationism and some of the basics of what this guy believes, and it's going to be virtually, you can't tell the difference between this mentally ill person's theology and anybody else's. So it makes it full scale to be targeted as something to be mocked, in my opinion. And again, it's because of it's a choice, and it's an expression. It's a means of expression. And I wish that they could do the same to atheists and atheism. Unfortunately, they're not quite in that position. So again, I was being facetious when I said, well, there's a good reason not to be a Christian. But again, our sense of humor is different there, and I can appreciate that too. Okay, we come from a different culture and we're a different age. I actually helped raise a Filipino guy. He was born in 1984. His sister was born in 1982 for a few years. and they'd be about your age. And when I saw you at first, is the first thing that sprung to my mind. And I have no nasty thoughts towards you at all. I see somebody who should read Anselm, and should read these other things, and look him up and try to see what you can find in terms of his argument. He tried to prove God exists, and um, he used necessary and contingent in a way that you should, review my videos and review some of the logical arguments that I gave you. In one of your comments, you said that that the theology should be approached with logic rather than with this kind of thing. Well, that's another thing I want to point out to you too, is that when people start mocking and yelling and screaming, they've given up on logic arguments. Logic arguments have failed. It's an admission of that. And what they've done now is they're just simply showing frustration. And so that's why I've said in the previous video that that's a valid way of approaching it. You can justify what they're doing because of what's going on. And that's probably one of the best examples I've ever seen, was the necessary contingent in the same argument used by the religious to try to prove the existence of God, when these are both systemic and they want to hold to what's called absolute truth. And I'll be glad to lay it out slowly if you need to, but an absolute truth can't be systemic, and both of these, contingent or necessary, are systems. An absolute truth is true independent of any system. It's true forever and ever, amen. It doesn't need a system before it to be true, whereas systemic truth does. It needs that particular system to exist before it, and the system to be established in order to be able to decide if something is true or false. And something has to be proven true, or it might be false. If it might be false, it might be true. It's a belief and not a truth. So we want to look at things through beliefs and truths, and they're both all combined as propositions. We propose something is the case, and we want to define them between a belief and a truth, and we're going to do this through formal logic. Please review my videos. Please review some of the arguments I've given. How can time exist before time exists? And it needs to in order for an event to happen to cause the start of time. So we can't start time. If time always exists and E equals mc squared is true, well, the speed of light requires time, and it cannot be true if time doesn't exist. Okay? So if time always exists, then so does energy, and so does mass. And these are some of the arguments that I've brought, Crispy. In the arguments on Bible burning or something like that, it was strictly to try to address those issues, the emotionalism from atheists, because normally we talk about atheists are coming out with an intellectual approach and stuff like that, but certainly the screaming and hollering and Bible burning is an expression of an emotional perspective. And so we want to see that as well, I think. We want to see, the whole gamut of things in order to understand how people are thinking about it. Okay, so you get back to me, and enjoy the debates. Thanks.